Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, despite the fact that Planned Parenthood remains one of the most popular institutions in the country because it provides millions of women low-cost health care, the Republican Party is hell-bent on shutting down the government in order to defund Planned Parenthood because, I don't know, 2 to 5% of Planned Parenthood's work is to provide abortions for women who choose to have an abortion, as is their right. And based upon a couple of videos that showed that Planned Parenthood, as is the law, the federal law passed in 1993, donates at cost, if women opt in to this program, donates fetal and embryonic tissue to research facilities so as to deal with diseases that plague people who are born and live as persons. And every Republican candidate has basically called for the government to be shut down and Planned Parenthood defunded, although, to his credit, Donald Trump at the very least acknowledged that Planned Parenthood is an organization that does a lot of good. And he just got the ickies and said, well, but we should tell them they can't do abortions anymore, even though that's perfectly legal. Ben Carson, who has now shot up in the polls after his stellar performance in saying virtually nothing at the last Republican debate, has repeatedly condemned using tissue from aborted fetuses for medical research. However, Jen Gunter, an OBGYN, wrote on her blog that in 1992, Carson co-authored an academic paper published in Fetal, must be some type of medical journal, in which he described using material, quote, from 2 fetuses aborted in the 9th and 17th week of gestation. How is that possible? Oh, because he was a doctor, and that's what doctors do when they are seeking to deal with some disease or they're doing research.
Have you read Mein Kampf?
Now, Carson apparently acknowledged that this is true, but he told the Washington Post today that his research was different from what he believes Planned Parenthood is doing. Now, that's pretty obvious because in this instance, Ben Carson, according to his scenario, is the grave digger who's going out and buying these fetuses, these babies, and tearing them limb from limb to do his research. But he said this, you have to look at the intent. To willfully ignore evidence that you have for some ideological reason is wrong. If you're killing babies and taking the tissue, that's a very different thing than taking a dead specimen and keeping a record of it. What? So it's a specimen, not a dead baby when he buys it. Now look, I don't blame Ben Carson because he's in a party of lunatics. And he did something that is completely legitimate to do. Now, granted, in 1992, the federal government and Republicans like Mitch McConnell hadn't voted to make this procedure federally legal. the use of this fetal tissue. It's one of the reasons why at the turn of last century, Carson said, the average age of death was 47. Now the average age of death is 80. Using the information that you have is a smart thing, not a dumb thing, he says. So in other words, endorsing the practice of the donation of fetal tissue to science. That's what he's doing. So the problem, according to Ben Carson, is not that the fetal tissue from an abortion is being used or purchased or donated or studied. It is that abortion is legal, which is what they should just come out and say. They have a problem with abortion, and that's fine for them to have that problem with abortion. That's their opinion. It's not the law. It's a right of women in this country. But Ben Carson, will he be in trouble with the Republican base because of this? That's really the interesting question. Will they make him pay a price? My guess, no. Because at the end of the day, they don't really believe any of it anyways. As long as they can punish women for having sex, they'll figure some other way of doing it. It's not about what the men do with the fetal tissue. I can assure you that had those videotapes been about a man, it would have gotten a lot less attention in the right. That I'm quite convinced of that. Dr. Ben Carson, did you want to weigh in on that?
Well, did you realize that I was a brain surgeon? See, a lot of people don't realize that racism doesn't exist, and you can discover that if you do brain surgery. You see what I'm saying?
I see.
I think that should be it, basically.
Okay.
He's like the white people will be reminded, like, wait, that's the black guy that says racism doesn't exist. I think he could do some tissue research or whatever the hell that means.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tissue doesn't have skin color.